Hi, this is Eric for Ochoy. In this video we're going to take a look at working with the transform nodes when working with Octane for Maya. And these nodes are primarily used for transforming textures on a surface within a material. So for this video I'm using the machinery_o2.ma scene. So I'm going to select this surface right here and let's go to the tab where we can find the material. It's called the donut material because this is a donut shaped thing. Not because it tastes like anything, but because it's a donut shaped thing. So let's select that and I'm going to create a new glossy material and apply it to it. Let's go to the glossy material and I'm going to click on the checker box next to diffuse and let's do an Octane image texture. So I'm going to find this panel 06 diffuse texture. And we can see applied to the surface there. It's not super pretty, but it should be functional for allowing us to see how the transform nodes work. Of course, this is being mapped based on the UVs of the surface. So within the texture node, the Octane image texture node, we'll find a slot called transform. I'm going to click on the checker box next to transform. This will pull up the create render node window automatically to the Octane transform section. And since this is a two-dimensional texture, I'll click on Octane Transform 2D. And then in the attributes for this Transform 2D node, you can see that we have a rotation slider, so we can rotate it around. And we also have scale and translation. So let's say I set the scale to 0.25 by 0.25. And then we can use translation to move it. So 0.1. or 0.5. So let's break the connection there. Take a look at some of the other nodes here. We have full transform, rotation, transform 2D, transform 3D, and scale transform. So it just depends what we want to do. If we only want to worry about scale, we don't want to worry about translation, we could just use scale transform. I think this is, again, pretty self-explanatory. I could just scale it as needed. It's a 2D texture, so this value isn't going to do anything. I'm going to break this connection. And let's check out full transform. So full transform just gives us all rotation, scale, and translation. There's nothing under extra attributes that's useful, so we can scale it and translate it. And then, of course, the Octane Transform 3D is almost exactly like the full transform. So they're kind of the same node. So another way that this is useful is if you wanted to, say, adjust the position of an environment texture. So let's go into the render settings under OctaneRender. And I'm going to click on this arrow to open up the attributes for our Octane Sun and Sky node. And this is already set to texture environment, so I'm going to add a texture. So I'll click on this checker box next to texture. Let's do Octane image texture, and I have an HDRI image that I can use. Let's adjust the gamma and set the power to 2, so it's a little bit more obvious. So you can see it's a spherically mapped HDR image. Looks really good, but maybe I want to adjust its position. So what I can do is I'll click on this checker box next to transform, and let's choose Octane rotation transform. And if I type in 20 into the Z field, you can see it's kind of tilting the image, probably not what we want. So what I'd like to do is just rotate it on its Y axis so that I can just spin it around rather than tilting it, because tilting it is not doing what I want. So how can we do that? Let's go back. I'm going to break this connection for transform, and I'm going to click on the checker box next to projection. And under projection, I'm going to choose spherical projection. So I don't see any difference yet, but it's basically remapping the image to a sphere around the scene. Now what I could do is I'll click on the checker box next to transform and choose Octane rotation transform. And now what I can do is if I type in a value into the Y field, it's going to rotate it around on the axis, which is pretty nice. If you really want to get clever and maybe a bit more interactive, what you can do is create, say, like a locator. So create locator, and let's rename this locator. Let's call it ENV rotate. So we know what it does. And now let's bring up the connection editor. So I'm going to go to General Editors, Connection Editor. Let's make sure that in ENV rotate is on the left side. Let's go to select Transform 3. This is the node for our environment. I'm going to click on Octane Image Texture. That's our HDRI environment. Go to Projection, go to Transform, and choose Select so the node is selected, and then reload right. Now what I could do is go into the translation. Let's make sure we have this transform node. Go down to rotate. Let's choose rotate Y, and then expand rotation under our transform node and choose rotation Y. Now we can close this. Now what I can do is I can actually rotate this locator around, which will now rotate the texture, making it much easier to work in the scene. So that's how you use the Octane transform nodes.